Welcome to another Raid Shadow Legends video. I'm Great Scott.
Hey, Scott!
And if you're new to our channel, what we do here is free-to-play, free champions only. Champions that everybody has access to, like campaign farmable champions, champions you could buy from the Tag Team Bazaar or the Clan Shop, daily login champions. We use a lot of rare champions because everybody has access to the rare champions, but we try not to use too many void rares because those are hard to come by. You'll also see some permanent fusion champions that we decided not to fuse, and instead we're using those in some of our content. So what I wanted to do with this channel is give everyone from the beginning a way that they can beat all the content without having to pull these super awesome legendary champions with, high-end super awesome gear. If I can show you how to beat it with regular, easy-to-acquire champions, then you can do it too, and that you won't get frustrated and you'll really have a good time playing the game. So today, what we're actually going to work on is the Undead Horde's faction crypt. And what I want to do maybe first is let's just go through the index and see some of the champions that we might like to use and why some of them might be good. So there really aren't any free legendary champions that we get to use. Harvest Jack a couple of years ago, Ultimate Death Knight was free a couple of years ago, so you might have one or two of those. I think Harvest Jack was 3 years ago, and Ultimate Death Knight was like 2 years ago. So if you happen to be playing that long, you're probably not going to be watching part 1 of the faction crypt. But if you have those champions, by all means, use them. As far as the epics go, we get some free epics. Daily login was Dark Aethel. I don't really like Dark Aethel for this application. She's okay. She's a 2-hitter with a 50% chance of decreasing defense on one enemy. That's okay. She does have an AoE where she could decrease speed. It's a 75% chance. That's really useful. But then this third one is just a flat AoE. You're never really going to kill more than 4 enemies at a time, so none of these other things. You're not killing 6 enemies. You're not killing 10 enemies at a time. It's kind of useless for the faction crypt here. She's got increased attack in all battles by 20%. That's fine. She's not bad. If you already built Dark Aethel to 60 and you enjoy using her in other content, by all means use her here. She does have a couple AoEs. She's got a decreased speed, which is pretty useful. I would use her if you already have her, but I wouldn't specifically build her up. Dark Elhain, I would build up. Dark Elhain is awesome. So they did a Tormund thing not too long ago, and everybody has Ykarl, and there's so many people who have freezing champions that she just is phenomenal when anybody gets frozen. She's going to activate her A2 whenever anybody gets frozen, and her A2 basically just does an AoE and just blasts everybody. If they try to freeze her, she's going to boost herself with increased crit rate, increased damage, and strengthen, and then, of course, she's going to blast everybody because chances are somebody else was frozen as well. So her damage gets really, really high when you use her if she gets frozen, but even when she doesn't get frozen, she still can increase her own attack by 50%. She has a chance of placing decreased speed on all allies. That's great. On all enemies. And she hits pretty hard with her A1. It does destroy their max HP, which is good for the boss, but it's not as useful as the AoE attacks, and we hope she gets frozen. Now, if she doesn't get frozen that many times during the faction wars, but you can use her in Arena, you can use her in Ice Golem, you can use her in the Doom Tower, because a lot of those things do freeze you. You can use her in Cursed City, so I would recommend raising her up to level 60 as soon as you get her, or shortly thereafter, because she's very useful in a lot of different content. Somebody that nobody talks about is Lich. Now, Lich is a free fusion intermediate. He's probably, I want to say, he's maybe part of the Rosin fusion, and you want to build one out for actual content, and you want to build one out to fuse into Rosin. So what makes him good? Well, this first one has a 50% chance of decreased accuracy on an enemy for 2 turns, useful for an A1. It's got a 60%, it places the big version of increased defense on himself and then heals him by 20% of his max HP. So that gives him some staying power. When he gets hurt in the battle, he can heal himself and increase his own defense. And then he attacks an enemy and decreases the turn meter by 100%. So it's a complete turn meter decrease, which is great for that last boss. Whenever you get to one of these bosses, they are susceptible to turn meter manipulation, and this is super helpful. He also places a decreased speed on him for 2 turns on a 3-turn turn cooldown. He's great. I love him for especially the boss fight. He is so helpful at giving me another chance to beat the boss, like beat his health bar down before he gets to take a turn. And he does increase our defense and faction crypts by 27%. So he's the person I'm actually going to put in the lead because of that aura. And like I said, he's a free fusion. He's a permanent fusion for Rosin. Don't forget to fuse him, set him aside, and then fuse another one, because once you fuse Rosin, you can't fuse him anymore. So it's very important that you do that first. Now, if you didn't do that, no big deal. We've got other choices here. Banshee's on the team. I put her in here in a stun set. She's got an AoE and an A1. She has a tiny chance, 30% of decreasing, small version of decreased defense. Great, who cares? The second one, she's got another AoE, and it has a 65% chance, 70 when you book it with the mastery, of removing a buff from each target. That is awesome. The reason that is good is because sometimes you're going to have retaliation kind of stuff, counterattacks going on. You're going to have unkillables, you're going to have block damages, you're going to have increased defense, you're going to have some of these champions heal themselves. If you can strip all that stuff away, it is very useful. And I put her in a stun set because of both of these AoEs, so she's going to be kicking out a lot of stuns when I get her to level 60, of course, and use the appropriate mastery. On her A3, she attacks 2 times, and she has a chance of putting block active skills. I don't use that very often. It's not very useful. She also increases ally resistance in battles by 52% when she gets to be level 60. That's a pretty good resist. I mean, that's super solid. So if you're not using Lich, she's another good lead for Faction Wars. Temptress. I like Temptress, but you gotta have Seducer with Temptress. I mean, you don't have to, but it helps. Her A1 has a chance of stealing a buff. It's only a 40% chance, 45 with the mastery. It's not bad. At least it steals some buffs, but it's only on one enemy. She attacks 4 times on her A2, and each hit has a 75% chance of placing a leech. So hopefully this 4 times at random hits all the different enemies. With a 75, 80 with the mastery percent chance of getting that leech, you're going to put leeches on quite a few enemies, which helps the rest of your team out, because when the rest of your team attacks, they're going to get some of their health back. She gets a 50% increased attack and a 30% increased crit rate on herself for 2 turns on a 4-turn cooldown. But if Seducer's on the team, she gets an extra turn, which makes it a 3-turn cooldown. So she gets these buffs for 2 turns on essentially a 3-turn cooldown if you can get Seducer there. Well, since we just talked about her, let's go talk about Seducer. I don't have Seducer, but I want him. Seducer has a chance of placing sleep. It's a 45% chance, not too useful for what we're doing here. He has a 100% chance when booked of placing the small version of decrease attack for 2 turns on all enemies. So it's an AoE, which is great, and it puts decreased attack on, so that's decent. Then you have a 30% increased defense, which is the small version, and a block buffs on all allies for 2 turns. So you're kind of reducing the enemy's ability to hit you, you're increasing your ability to take the damage, and you're blocking debuffs, so they're not going to be debuffing you. So automatically his kit is really good. But what it really makes him shine is this. When Temptress is on the team, he gets the ability of placing a 50% ally protection buff on everybody, which normally for rares is too much. For rares, it generally kills him. However, he puts a block damage buff on himself for a turn. So whenever the entire team is getting wrecked in that first attack after he places this, he doesn't take any damage. So he mitigates 50% of the damage they're taking without taking any damage himself. Now, the next turn, he takes 50% of the damage, so hopefully, your team has done some work before that turn takes place, but at least this is a great way to protect your team on a 4-turn cooldown for 2 turns. He also increases all the hit points in battles by 25%, so if you don't have Lich or you don't want to use the resist from Banshee, he's also a great lead for your aura. So Seducer and Temptress work well together, and I like those two. Also, you've got a Frozen Banshee Grave Chill team. They work really great on the boss, and sometimes they work pretty good on the waves too. Frozen Banshee, of course, on her A3 has to place Poison Sensitivity in order for her A1 to place 2 poisons. Big versions, and it happens quite frequently. As long as you give Frozen Banshee enough accuracy, she'll always land her Poison Sensitivity. Unless, of course, it's a bad affinity match. If they've got a lot of debuffs on them, like bosses tend to get debuffs stacked on them. You can use her A2, which fills the turn meters of all your allies by 2% for each debuff on the target, and at the most you're going to have 10 debuffs, so that's a 20% turn meter fill. If there's only 5 debuffs, it's still a 10% turn meter fill for all your allies. Not bad, not terribly useful, but this aura, Accuracy in All Battles 35, is actually pretty useful. So I would consider going Frozen Banshee, Grave Chill Killer combination, or I would choose Temptress Seducer combination. I wouldn't mix and match. Now, Grave Chill relies on Frozen Banshee because on her A3, she can place 2 big versions of the poison if they're under poison sensitivity. If not, they place the crappy version and it's not really very useful. On the A1, she has a 50, 55 if you book it with the mastery of placing a big version of poison, and she also brings with her a big version of decreased defense on one enemy, preferably the boss, if the enemy's under a poison debuff. Presumably, if you've got Frozen Banshee and Grave Chill Killer on the same team, everybody's going to be poisoned, especially the boss at the end. So I would say Banshee, yes, Temptress and Seducer if you have them both, or Frozen Banshee and Grave Chill if you have them both. I would not go Sorceress. All she really does is excuse me, I can't talk today. Decrease speed, small chance, 30, 35 if you get the mastery. And she has a chance to place an extra hit, which is kind of a useless A2. She attacks 3 times at random and has a 30% chance of placing a 60% decreased defense. So they got the big decreased defense, a small chance to land it. 3 times 30, you might get it off, but I've found more often than not, whenever you have less than a 50% chance of hitting something on a multi-hitter, none of them hit, or very rarely do they hit. So just because it's 30% times 3, which you think 90% it's going to happen, it does not happen 90% of the time. Each hit is calculated independently, and you get like a 70% chance to miss, a 70% chance to miss, and another 70% chance to miss. So she's not good at this particular application, so I don't really like her for the faction wars. Grinner, I do. He is the only reviver we have here, and he revives an ally with a 50% hit points. That's a huge revive. He also throws a shield on the revive champion equal to 20% of their max HP. So that's like reviving them with 70% hit points. So that's actually pretty awesome. He also has an attack where he has a chance, it's a small chance, 25%, 30 if you use the mastery, of putting 50% increased attack on all allies for 2 turns. Hey, it's something. He's here for a reviver. That's just a bonus. He also has an AoE and has a 20%, 30, 40, 50%, 55 with nope, it's just 50%. It doesn't get a mastery boost of removing a random buff from each target. An AoE that has a chance, even if it's only a 50% chance of removing a buff from everybody. That's a pretty good skill to have. Grinner makes the team. He also can increase your resistance and faction crypts by 30, but we already saw Banshee gives you 52%. So we're pretty much going to use Grinner as a reviver, Banshee probably as a resistance lead, unless of course you're using Seducer or Lich as your other leads. Wretch, I love Wretch. He was an early clan boss hero. Love him to death. He attacks 2 times. Each has a chance of putting heal reduction on. Doesn't work for clan boss, but it does work for Fire Knight. On his A2, he can heal himself for 15% of the damage inflicted. On his A3, he throws a hit point burn for 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown. That's pretty good, especially if you build him with some speed. And he starts with 97, which isn't bad. So he's pretty fast, and he's pretty good at applying that burn over and over again. So he was on my clan boss team to apply that burn. And it's a rare burn, which is not as good as an epic or a legendary burn, because rare burns will do like 50,000, whereas an epic burn will do like 62.5, and then like a legendary will do like 75,000 on the Nightmare clan boss. So it's a low burn, but he can burn at least, and he can heal himself when he hits the clan boss, so he's pretty reasonable. He adds attack in all battles by 30%, but it's only for force allies. Great for clan boss early on. I used him as a burner. It works well. I've also used him as a burner on some bosses like the dragon and the spider. He's not great in those applications because he only has like single hitters, but he can still heal himself and he can still put a burn out there. Bone Knight I don't use. He's pretty much just garbage. Let's see, I don't even want to go through him. Rotting Mage, So Rotting Mage has the A3 ability, which actually throws a stun out there. It's a 100% chance of stunning on one enemy. That's about all he brings to the table. He does have an increased attack. It's a small version. Yeah, so he can increase your whole team's attack, small version, and he puts a small version of increased defense on himself for a couple of turns on a 3-turn cooldown. It's not terrible. If you don't have increased attack, that's something. He has a chance of freeze. It's only 25%, so it will be 30 if you use the mastery. Or maybe it won't be. Never mind. You can't even use the mastery on that one. So in this particular case, he's going to wind up with a 25% chance of freeze. I don't use him. He's not great. Arbalester, her A2 actually has a 100% chance when booked of putting the target skills on cooldown. I like that skill. I mean, it's a great skill. She's got pretty good multipliers. Her damage increases according to the number of debuffs on the target. Okay, so you can put some debuffs with some poisons and things. You might want to add her with the Grave Chill Killer, Frozen Banshee team to maybe throw a lot of debuffs, and then you start slamming the boss with Arbalester. She has the ability to transfer one debuff from herself to the target. So if you have like the boss at the end who's debuffing you, her A1 actually has a total of 75% chance of transferring that to the boss. So it kind of helps. It's like a cleanse, but not really a full cleanse, just a single debuff cleanse. It's not bad. She does pretty well. She's got pretty high attack for a rare champion. Her hit points are pretty good. So she can smack, and she's okay, but you got to have a bunch of debuffs for her to use her A3 effectively. And you have to have a lot of accuracy on her if you want to be using some of those. Now, Doomscreech, I love. I haven't necessarily put him on the team always, but, I mean, he might make the team. I don't know. And the reason I like him is for his A2. He can fill the turn meters of all allies by 30%, and that gives you a huge jump start at any point in the fight when you need it. A 30% increase boost makes you go so much faster. In the same skill, he increases everybody's defense by 60% for 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown. Giving you a boost for 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown, well, giving you a boost in defense for 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown is a super awesome skill. It's a high turn meter fill, and it's the big version of defense. Now, if you have defensive nukers on your team, this would be an ideal thing, because he's going to make sure your nukers go first, and he's going to make sure you're getting the big version of increased defense for more damage. Great for defensive nukers, probably good for a tag team. I think he might make the Faction Wars team because he is that good. On his A3, he's got an AoE, but he shields himself for 30% of his max HP for 2 turns. His damage increases according to his current health. So that's great. I mean, he's putting defense on himself. He's shielding himself. He's attacking and throwing some, decrease accuracy on an enemy. He's got some good skills. He might make the team. He increases our hit points by 21%, which is good because he's a hit point based champion. He's got 20,000 to start with, which is a really good hit point to start with for a rare. Defense is a little low, speed's okay. He might make the team. We'll see what happens. Hollow, I don't know. Hollow is not really that good. He's got a 4-hitter. So Hollow is one of those guys that you might take into a Fire Knight team. And in this particular case, what you might do with him is you might build him with super speed and super accuracy, so it's like a 2-to-1. So he can hit 4 times, and then he can hit another 4 times after 2 turns to really get that second attack through before the Fire Knight gets to go. So you got to make him like 300 speed or so, and he might do well for you. You also have to get his accuracy up there so he can decrease the turn meter once the shield is down, because it's going to fill his turn meter. So assuming you get the shield down on the first round, and you can use this to do it, every time you use this afterwards, he gets a 20% increase, and the Fire Knight takes a 20% decrease. Well, that makes him go so much faster, especially if his speed's 250, 300. He's going to go again and get more turn meter and reduce turn meter. He's going to go again, get more turn meter and reduce turn meter. It's kind of like an infinite turn meter control on an A2. It's I don't know, it seems like it could be pretty good in some applications. It's probably pretty good on the end boss, but I don't think he really brings enough to the team. On his A3, he does have a big hitter. He ignores 25% of the target's defense, so if you put the mastery, ignore defense, from the offensive tree, he might do fairly well as far as damage dealing goes. So you can build him as a speed freak and try to get the turn meter control with accuracy, or you can build him as a nuker for his A3. You can't really build both. There's just not enough resources to do something like that. He puts like the tiny version of poison with a 20% chance on his A1. I don't really think he's that useful. He's got a couple cool parts to his kit, but you'd really have to specialize him if you wanted to use him. So I think I'll pass on him. We already talked about Seducer. There's not really anybody else in here to talk about. Stitched Beast, Skeleton, Bloat Wraith. None of these are any good for our team. So let's just jump in and look at a team that we can go play around with and see how we do. I haven't been doing very well. I've only got 48 stars, so I have all of part 2 left. I'm sorry, yeah, I think part 3 left to do. Because part 1 is 1 through 10, and I'll show you how to do 1 through 10, but realistically, you want to get to 7 so you can beat the boss. Because there's a quest that says, an advanced quest that says beat a Faction Wars boss. You got to get to 7 to be able to do that. I usually push to 10 because 10 is kind of like that mid-range where now you got to start getting some 50s and or a 60 in there depending on the faction in order for you to keep going with it. However, when we get to stage 13, 13 is great because 13 actually gives you access to some of those legendary materials. So I'm just going to put together a team on 13, and what I've got here is I've thrown together a Banshee at level 40 with a stun set. I've got my level 60 Dark Elhain. There's no way to take levels off from her, so I just left her in there. I've got my Doom Screech at level 50. I've got my Grinner in there, and then I've got a Lich. Lich is 40. And he's completely naked. He doesn't have a stitch of gear on at all whatsoever. And I'll show you how naked he is when the run's over. But luckily, I think Grinner has a bolster set on, so we're going to do fine. Or maybe it's Doom Screech. I'm not sure who has the bolster set. We're just going to run this on auto. It's pretty easy. It's pretty fast. I might lose somebody. Grinner might pick him up. But like I'm running 2 level 40s and 2 level 50s. It's not like this is all a level 60s team. If it was, I should be doing level 21 by now, right? But yeah, getting to level 13 gets you those legendary materials, which allows you to do your awesome perception gear and some other things. So I highly recommend getting to level 13 as quickly as you can on each one of your faction crypts because those materials are really important. So there we go, got through the first wave, nobody really took any damage. Now, they used up all their skills, so let's see how well they do on the second wave. I'm especially concerned because some of these guys block the ability to heal. Now we've got all these retaliation counterattack things going on. Luckily, Banshee removed one of the retaliation buffs, I think. She didn't remove the unkillable. It's okay. We'll see what happens here. Doesn't look like anybody's really in any danger. I don't like the counterattacks. Retaliation is terrible. Plus that unkillable in the back there. I don't know what the name of that guy is, but he gives ally protect and you can't kill him. So it doesn't matter how hard you hit anybody. Nobody can get killed that way. Well, he can't get killed anyway. And anytime you have somebody in counterattack with the counterattack buff or retaliation gear, Banshee's terrible because if the whole team has counterattack, she only has AoEs, and even her A3 is a multi-hitter, so it's going to hit at least 2 of those guys, and they're all going to retaliate and kill her. So let's see if we can smoke this whole crew. Oh, I got most of them. I don't want him to get too many hits because my Banshee's already at half health, and she might fall on the game on this particular round. Well, it looks like we might have a good chance of taking this one with, all 3 stars. And I can tell you already, if you have just one nuker, get that nuker to level 60. They'll push you through the faction wars so fast. Dark Elhain obviously was the star to shine here at 346,000. Everybody else just basically just had a little bit of damage, but that's what you'd expect from level 40s. That's what you'd expect from level 50s. You don't expect huge nukers. That's why having one nuker on the team is a good choice. Some other choices, like if you see down here, I have level 60 Frozen Banshee level 60. I have Gravechill Killer level 60. I mean, I can put some serious hurting on a lot of these. But since this is only part 1, we're going to use just level 40s and 50 champions, and I'll show you my Lich literally has no clothes on. He's so funny. Where's my Lich here? Oh, my Lich level 40. There he is. He has nothing on. He's got no masteries. He's got no skills. He's got no artifacts, and he survived the whole fight. It was pretty easy. Yep, my bolster set is actually on my Grinner, which my Grinner's level 50. He's got an okay bolster set. So on Dark Elhain, I have Savage and crit damage gear, and the reason for that is because I use her in the arena to take care of the Torments, to take care of the Carls, to take care of any of those freezing champions, because if your team gets frozen, it sucks. I also use her on Ice Golem, so I need all of that attack damage and I need all of that critical rate, and it's not even that high really. So my attack damage is pretty high. So my attack damage is 43. My crit rate is only 71, which I really need to increase that. But my crit damage is only 160. I'd like this at 300 if I could with that attack damage. 100% crit rate, 300 crit damage, 4,000 attack. I'd be styling, especially considering I'm ignoring 25% on that, and I'm ignoring 50% chance of ignoring 25% on this. So I could potentially be ignoring 50% of their defense, and that makes some pretty big hits. They fall pretty quick when she gets frozen because of her passive. So she's the dominant factor here. Any level 60 would do it. You could have done it with Dark Aethel, because she hits pretty hard at level 60 as well, especially with her AoEs, and you could just put her in the same gear. Doomscreech, he's got some speed gear with some protection. That's basically just to protect his increased defense. Maybe I did it for hit points and speed, just because those are the pieces I had. He doesn't even have an amulet on. I should put an amulet on him. Probably going to be a hit point amulet or even a defense amulet, something like that. He's not really even well built. Of course, my Banshee is level 40. Let's take a look at these massive stats. She's got 26,000 hit points, not even 900 defense. So no wonder she was taking hits like crazy. No critical rate, but she does have 141 accuracy. That helps her maybe strip some of those buffs that I was talking about with their A2, but I'd like to get her accuracy high, so when I get her to level 60, she's going to be having an accuracy banner. It would actually help, instead of a resistance chest, to put her in an accuracy chest, so I might consider doing that so that she can strip those buffs better. But I've got a naked level 40, a really weak level 40 with terrible stats. I've got a bolster set on a level 50. I've got a speed set with a protected buff on another level 50, and then of course my level 60 is just all super damage. So I hope that helps go over some of the faction wars and what you can do to get 1 through 10. And as we see, this team got all the way through 1 through 13. They 3-starred 13. They probably could go up to 15 or 16. I might be able to go further if I go in here and instead of my level 50s here, if I put in my level 60s, I might be able to do a little bit better. Who knows? Oh, Lich is naked, so I probably should take Lich out and put in somebody who's a little tougher. But I think with part 1 is 1 through 10, part 2 is 11 through 14, and part 3 is 15 through 21. And when you get through 15 through 21, you pretty much need all level 60s. So I would have to have all 3, Lich, Grinner, Doomscreech, all 3 of those are going to have to be level 60s. Or I can, decide to, well, I want Grinner in there, and I think I want Lich in there. But if I did something like this, that would be kind of a nice thing, because I could really destroy the boss. Whereas Dark Elhain can destroy the waves, and Gravechill Killer, Frozen Banshee, and Lich could destroy the boss. Lich with his complete turn meter reduction. So if that's the case, I think that probably will get me through. I got a little bit of leveling to do, but I'm not doing so bad right now. For part 1 through 10, piece of cake with some 40s. Just get one of your nukers to 60, doesn't matter which one, and you'll be just fine getting through there. Well, I hope you enjoyed this. If you have anything to add or if I made a mistake or something, let me know in the comments. I do read those. So I guess until next time, we'll check you later. Goodbye.